time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face, and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
This way. That's it right there, pulling up.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
You've heard me play that montage probably hundreds of times on the show. I've certainly played it an equal number of times on the live stream, which you can watch right now at Rumble. Go to rumble.com/Casey the host. That is one of several montages. The reason I play that one is it's only 2 minutes and 20 seconds. You know, I've got them where they're 15, 16 minutes. There's one out there that's 32 minutes. You can keep adding to this. Four times that we know of, there has been an active assassination plot against Donald Trump in this election cycle. 4. Not 2, 4. 2 times they got where bullets either rang out or were about to. And the news media running around and talking about it being the second attempt, that's not good enough. 4. Including one that the federal government says is attached to the government of Iran, which is extremely relevant with the latest assassination attempt on Donald Trump. We'll get to that and why that's a serious issue here in a couple of minutes, because, again, a lot of people may not know that particular angle. So Trump was tackled by Secret Service agents when he was on the 5th hole after pops rang out. Again, that's according to Fox News and early reports here. I would also like to point out, as somebody who's not a firearms expert, but somebody who probably knows more about guns than the average bear, if I see one more so-called expert pundit on any cable news network call an SKS an AK-47 and say that they're the same thing, again, I'm going to lose my mind. They're not the same thing. They're very different rifles, different eras. The AK-47 actually replaced the SKS. I don't need to get into the history of it, but for the love of God, if you're going to go on national television and you're going to be giving expert commentary about the rifle that the shooter was using, get it correct. It isn't an AK-47 if it's an SKS. It is not an SKS if it's an AK-47. Get it? Even the people who are out there trying to give you decent information about it are still screwing this basic thing up. It's not helping matters at all. Trump responded saying, "I will never surrender." Former President Donald Trump released an official statement following the second failed attempt to assassinate him. Again, technically, there's been 4 plots. The other 2 were unraveled before they got to the action stage of the plot. He declared his love for his supporters and reassured them that he will never surrender. Secret Service agents thwarted the assassination attempt against the 45th president on Sunday after shots were fired at his Trump International Golf Course near West Palm Beach, Florida. The former president was playing golf when an armed suspect was spotted approaching his position. The shooter opened fire first, according to some reports. That is in question now. It keeps going back and forth. So I'm just letting you know. I'm hearing that the shooter fired first and then the Secret Service fired. I'm also hearing that the Secret Service, that they saw the rifle and they opened fire first. So that appears to be going back and forth. I'm just waiting for definitive confirmation on either one of them. And it may have happened during the day today and I missed it. So if that happened and I'm wrong, I apologize. Early on, we heard that he shot first and that the Secret Service responded. And then I've been hearing throughout the day that the Secret Service fired first because they saw the rifle protruding from the fence line. So it could be either one of those. We'll let you know as soon as we're definitive. And if you're in the live chat on Rumble, let me know. The same day, Trump released an official statement on the shooting. There were gunshots in my vicinity, but before rumors start spiraling out of control, I want you to hear this first. I am safe and well. Nothing will slow me down. I will never surrender. I will always love you for supporting me. I think that one of the probably the best criticisms of Trump during the debate with Kamala was that when she tried to talk about the crowds leaving his rallies because they were bored, which obviously isn't true, but positive criticism, if you will, from supporters, but I mean, not positive, you know what I mean? Supporters who like Trump giving criticism, saying, hey, I was shot in the head and my supporters didn't leave. That would have been a great rebuttal to that. It would have been a really good moment for him in the debate. He missed it. The suspected shooter is a 58-year-old. Now, this guy, I thought he looked familiar. This, well, we'll call him a turd just so we can keep it radio friendly. This turd was somebody that I had encountered several times on social media as well. And, you know, a lot of people in the political space kind of ran into this dude. And I'm still trying to figure out how it is that this guy had so much attention from the news media over the past several years, because he's gotten a lot of attention. New York Times and other media publications is talking about this guy. You know, here's the thing. Like, I've witnessed this a couple of times in my career, and I'm witnessing it right now. There are points where you have somebody who's kind of normal, and something happens, okay? Sometimes you know what happens, sometimes you don't know what happens, but something happens, and then that normal person goes down a rabbit hole, and they're lost, and they go crazy. They go a little nuts, and they never climb out of that rabbit hole. They think the best way to climb out of that rabbit hole is to dig down. Does that make sense? And I've seen this several times in my career. You can spot those people a mile away. And it happens on all political sides, okay? This isn't just a left-wing, right-wing thing. You see that. This happens with people. Some people just go down a rabbit hole and they never recover. This guy has all of the red flags of that. Like every single his neighbors are like, he was cuckoo. This dude was nuts. All of the events that he was doing, trying to get people to go fight in Ukraine and everything else, the guy he's dressed like somebody who is a giant red flag. And so how is it that the news media sees this guy and doesn't just look at him and go, yeah, it's another nutto, but they actually give him some credence and credibility? And I just, to me, it's amazing. Like, the idea that Morgan or myself could be interviewed by the New York Times for some random thing that we're doing, dressed the way that this guy was dressed, is just bizarre. Because the New York Times would look at somebody who dressed that way and they would immediately run the opposite direction because you know what you're going to get with that person. So he's 58 years old. He was apprehended after fleeing the scene, according to local police. The sheriff has given pretty good accounts of this. There was a witness who saw the car, saw him get in the car, and took a picture of the car and the license plate. And the moment the bolo went out, this guy was captured. Thank God. So there's a lot that we have to talk about here. And, I've joked about this several times, but, this tinfoil hat is here for a reason. It's always been kind of a joke. It's always been kind of like the humorous thing. And I know that I've said, I'm not going to say it, even though I have said it, but I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. But I think that we honestly have to have this discussion, folks. And I know that this was happening with me and my circle last night. And this was happening with a lot of people earlier today and throughout the day. And then I know that Dan Bongino got into it as well. But this is the question that has to be asked at this point in time. Is there a mole inside the Secret Service trying to get Trump killed? And this is not something that I say lightly. This isn't something that can be dismissed at all. Because this guy was on the fifth hole. He knew that Trump was golfing that day. He knew that Trump was going to be there. And he set himself up to take a shot. And we have to ask, how did he know that Trump was going to be there? How did he know when he was going to be there, that he was going to be there, that he was going to play those holes that way? How did he know that? What transpired when he set up his, we'll call it a makeshift sniper's nest for lack of better terminology? It's really just kind of like a makeshift fighting position, but how did he know that? That's not a guess. That's not just getting lucky. He had to have known that that was going to happen. So how did he know that? We still don't have an answer to that. And this is leading a lot of people to ask some very basic questions considering the recent history of the Secret Service. None of those questions, by the way, are unreasonable to ask. And Dan Bongino brought up the recent breach at the Secret Service that we knew the Secret Service had been breached by foreign governments and that they had people who are working for foreign governments, including Russia, inside the Secret Service. So it is certainly possible that there's somebody inside the Secret Service who thinks that Trump is so bad that they will work with, whether they realize they're doing it or not, they will work with anybody, including a foreign government, to get him killed because they think, and again, I'm just from a perspective, argument here, because they think at the end of the day that would be the best thing to happen. That they actually think working with, the Iranians might actually be the most patriotic thing to do because Trump is so bad. There are people with Trump derangement syndrome that are that insane. But it is a question that must be asked. There's no sense in spending an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours before I get to that point and then hopping off of the air. So I'm just going to give it to you right at the beginning. Is there a mole in the Secret Service? Is there somebody in the Secret Service that is helping would-be assassins to try and kill Donald Trump? We got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth. If you learn nothing today, learn that an SKS is not an AK-47. Because every time you watch the news, I know I watched 3 newscasts today, they all had it wrong. Drove me absolutely bonkers. But it's a minor thing, minor detail. Just, I want you to be aware of it. So when experts run around saying that stuff, just keep in mind that they are very different rifles. So I have this is another discussion that's happening too, because Elon Musk, my audio is muted, correct? Okay. I just want to make sure it's muted. Elon Musk got rid of the shooter's profile on X. And this is leading to a discussion and a debate about, hey, leave this guy's insane ramblings up. Let us pour through them. And while I think that is an admirable thing, I did post a little while ago, you need to understand a couple of things, legally speaking. Now, I have most of his posts, and there are others that have them too. So, yes, I agree with all of you that it should be archived. We should be able to see what was said. we shouldn't have to lose this stuff to history and not be able to understand what the motivations and the twisted mind of somebody who does something like this was actually like. Because what that does is it allows the media to spin a narrative like they did spin yesterday and early today that he was a Republican. Right? So that's the whole thing. You get rid of the history of this guy and what he said, and it allows the media to turn it into whatever they want. And so there's some real truth there. When people are critical of X and Elon Musk shutting down his social media, like, that's a fair criticism. And I don't know what the answer to that is. Maybe it's social media companies taking the archive of it, holding it back for a little bit, and then releasing it at a future date. I don't know. I don't really know how that looks. But there's something else that needs to be factored in here. And that is the very real possibility of copycats. So if you study this type of activity throughout human history, and it's this way everywhere, but particularly in the United States of America, you have a mass public shooting or an assassination attempt. The assailant's words are then inspiration for other people who have been kind of on the fence about that. The lowest common denominators that we talk about, and then they will find inspiration in those words, and they will pick up the mission and take up the cause. And then they often do a duplicate attack. So there is this weird line that has to be walked between let us see how crazy this person was and also not allowing for copycats. And Elon Musk is in an interesting situation here. He's a free speech advocate. This guy violated his rules. There's no doubt about that. He violated the rules of X. And he's got to make a decision about pulling the account down or letting everybody see it. And people want to see it. We're naturally curious. I don't think it's unreasonable to want to know what made this guy tick. But there may need to be a cooling off period to avoid duplicates and copycats. So just keep that in mind. And also the other thing, too, is if they leave it up there and there is a copycat who goes out there and actually takes people's lives, like, all of a sudden Elon Musk and X are now, potentially liable in a suit because they didn't act and they didn't take it down, which we have an entire history of case law demonstrating. So please keep that in mind before you get too hard on Elon Musk about blocking this guy's account. He suspended the account. He didn't delete it. He suspended it, which means those posts are still there. They can be retrieved. It's just maybe not right now. We got more coming up, including some details on who this guy actually was and who he donated to, coming up on The Burning Truth. You're listening to, Casey Hendrickson on The Burning Truth. I'm redundant. Whatever. You know what I mean.
The Burning Truth with Casey Hendrickson.
Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. Want to thank R&B Car Company, locations in South Bend, Warsaw, and Fort Wayne. Go to rbcarcompany.com. You can also watch the live stream on Rumble. Go to rumble.com/Casey the host. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Would really appreciate that. Got near 400 people watching right now. If you could hit that thumbs up button, that really does help with the algorithm, like a lot. And I would greatly appreciate it if you would hit that thumbs up button. I know that some of you can't because you're watching on your TV or whatever, but if you have the ability to, I would appreciate it. So the shooter, and I'm staring at some of his social media posts to point out that he is obsessed with Ukraine is a bit of an understatement. His mission was basically to just get as many people as he could into Ukraine, fighting for Ukraine, and he actually wanted to get Afghans to fight in Ukraine. Like, that was, I want you to think about, for those of you who are, veterans of Afghanistan, or even just during the past 23 years, think about the mental state of somebody who thinks that they can get Afghan soldiers to go fight in Ukraine. Just think about that for a second. Like, why on earth would they ever do that? And what motivation would they have? I mean, this is going back to the 70s and going, oh, well, you must hate the Russians, so fight against the Russians. But that's not what their concerns are. This is a guy who's clearly out of touch with reality. We know that. But he was desperately trying to get people to fight in Ukraine. I mean, he wanted us to fight in Ukraine. He wanted other people to fight in Ukraine. Like, I'm going through just his social media posts right now, just some of the stuff that he's doing. Ukraine's government actually reacted to the shooter because the shooter was going out there and saying that, I was having meetings with Ukrainian officials all the time. Ukrainian government's like, we knew who the guy was, but we thought he was a wackadoodle, so we never actually took any meetings with the guy. And that may be the case. I don't know. So the Ukrainian government has kind of disavowed any relationship that they have with him. Nor am I aware of any credible information that would suggest that he is trying to kill Trump on behalf of Ukraine or anything like that. There is a video of him in a commercial, which is being spread around where, they're like, it's a BlackRock commercial. Well, it's not a commercial for BlackRock, but keep in mind that BlackRock basically funds everything in Ukraine. But it was a commercial for the Azov battalion, the Nazis. Morgan, they're less Nazi now, though. They're still a little Nazi, but they're less Nazi now. And it's wrong for us to point out that the Azov battalion really likes Nazis. Okay, it's wrong for us to point that out because they're less Nazi now. Okay, they accept other people who don't hate Jews now. So that's a thing. Hey, remember when our Biden official went over to Ukraine and had a sit down with Ukrainian government officials in a restaurant that was a Nazi themed restaurant, but they took all the Nazi themed paraphernalia down? Remember that? That was that 3 months ago, 4 months ago? Remember that, Morgan? That was an interesting story, right? So anyway, sidebar, why is Fox News constantly using Azov battalion drone footage? Just saying, asking questions, sit, just asking questions. So he's got a lot of posts that he actually, is writing in other languages, and he's giving his phone number out, and hey, come with me, and we're going to go fight in Ukraine and everything else. He never fought in Ukraine. He went to Ukraine. He's like your typical keyboard warrior. Like, I'm going to go defend Ukrainian people. And then he went there and he didn't do anything, kind of like a local city council official in my neck of the woods who pretended to go to Ukraine and fight for the Ukrainians too. It's, you know who you are, you coward. But he's got like emails up there. His entire social media timeline is just full of let's come and fight in Ukraine. But he also posted stuff about Israel. I am unclear what part of Israel the Jews owned based on this historic map. Judea, perhaps? It seems to historically all be Palestinian. Oh. So, yeah, he's an idiot. I love how you look at an historical map that was drawn up long after, the history of the area started. So he's kind of anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian. He had some conspiracy theories posted on there, very in favor of Ukraine, very in favor of Taiwan. So he's got some overlapping opinions with the political right. And I guess some people said that he had at one point supported Trump. I don't know that that's been confirmed. They did interview his son, and his son said that his dad was nonviolent. And to the best of his knowledge, my dad has only ever had speeding tickets and parking tickets. He's never done anything bad in his entire life. My dad is super awesome, nonviolent guy. Your dad was literally advocating for shooting Russians in the face, but I digress. And not that I, don't appreciate that sentiment, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just saying that's when I run around and tell you that I want to kill pedophiles, I don't think that allows me to be qualified as nonviolent. Do you think, Morgan, that doesn't, I don't, do I apologize for that? No, I'm not going to tell you I'm nonviolent because I'm absolutely pro-violence when it's appropriate. And killing pedophiles for me is one of those things. For him, killing Russians is one of those things. Even fighting the Chinese, which, we might even agree on. So it's interesting that his kid said that. His kid also said, like every sane person, he didn't like Donald Trump, which, here we go. So now we understand what's going on. The problem is that the shooter has a bit more of a past than just the whole I have a speeding ticket, because it's way more than that. He actually, ladies and gentlemen, was involved in a standoff. A standoff with the police. His criminal record dates back to at least 2002. I guess he didn't tell his kid about this one, Morgan. When he was convicted in Guilford County, North Carolina, on one felony count of possession of a weapon of mass destruction, according to a review of a state court record. Now, I disagree with any weapon of mass destruction charge being applied to a firearm, but I digress. The Greensboro News and Record reported at the time that a man of the same name and the same age as the shooter had fled from police during a traffic stop and holed up inside of a local business, triggering a 3-hour standoff. The weapon of mass destruction charge was brought against him over a fully automatic machine gun that he had, according to the News and Record. Oh, so back in 2002, he illegally possessed a firearm. Oh, that seems interesting, Morgan, don't you think? He was the owner of United Roofing at the time, which is the building that he holed up in, which lists a company email in his name. He wrote on his LinkedIn profile that he had relocated to Hawaii in 2018, a move indicated by his address history displayed in a public records search. In 2010, the shooter was convicted of possession of stolen goods and sentenced to probation. Further details of those charges are unclear. So in 2002, he had an illegal gun, and he got in a standoff over multiple hours with police. He moves to Hawaii. In 2010, he's convicted of possessing stolen property. A former employee of his told The Independent that she remembers his standoff with police in 2002, adding that her former boss was widely derided for his penchant for doing stupid bleep. Okay? So the guy has largely been an idiot his entire life. Tina Cooper worked for the shooter at United Roofing during the incident. She said he had a standoff here, and I don't know what he was thinking then either, adding that he did some stupid bleep down here and got away with some of it. Although he no longer had a valid license, he was behind the wheel when he was pulled over in by Greensboro police, according to news reports from the time. He fled the scene, drove to United Roofing offices where he barricaded himself inside, armed with a fully automatic machine gun, according to the local paper. 3 hours later, he surrendered. He was charged with carrying a concealed weapon and possession of a weapon of mass destruction for the machine gun, as well as resisting, delaying, and obstructing a law enforcement officer and driving while his license was revoked. Tracy Folk, the officer who arrested him that day, said in an interview with Wired magazine, "I figured that he was either dead or in prison by now. I had no clue that he had moved on and was continuing his escapades." Now, the other thing that happened, I'm just pointing out because somebody was like, I bet we're going to find out that he was known to authorities. You're darn right he was. But one of the narratives that we got pretty early on was that the shooter was a Republican. And so this is really just another example of right-wing violence. Is it, though? I've got some interesting information about that as well. More coming up. You're listening to The Burning Truth. Yeah, if it were me, I would have his son in the crosshairs of a Secret Service investigation, too. The shooter's kid doesn't sound very sane either. So just look at the pictures of this guy. Like I said, there's a certain vibe that crazy people kind of give off, and this guy gives off that vibe. So, for anybody in the news media to be going out there and interviewing this dude, and somehow he amazingly got lots of media interviews with big media outlets. He also praised NBC's Lester Holt, who blamed Trump for the latest assassination attempt. Okay? Again, here's the thing. If you're going to go out there and you're going to say, Trump's own rhetoric is the reason that we keep trying to kill him, right? One, the news media has continuously lied to you about Donald Trump. Kamala Harris sat on the debate stage the other day, and she repeated numerous debunked lies that were floated by the news media. And when they were debunked, the news media didn't tell you they were debunked. And then the news media did not debunk her and fact check her right there in real time when she repeated them, like the Charlottesville lie. There are people out there who believe, because they were deceived by the news media, that Donald Trump said neo-Nazis were very fine people. It's a lie. There are people out there who think that Donald Trump said to inject yourself with bleach to kill COVID. That is a lie. There are all sorts of these examples out there. Now, if we're going to use Lester Holt's logic, Lester Holt has said a lot of things that were not true over the years on his show, things that have stoked violent rhetoric in the United States, things that have endangered police officers in the United States. And using Lester Holt's own logic, the things that Lester Holt has said on his show could, in fact, lead to violence upon Lester Holt. And according to Lester Holt, that would be just fine because his rhetoric led to it, right? Are we supposed to accept that flawed logic? Because that seems a little insane. You know, if somebody says something that you don't like, you don't shoot them in the face. That's not how we're supposed to behave in a civil society. But when you go out there and you say Trump is going to be a dictator, which is nonsense, but you get idiots like this shooter, who clearly has a history of being a dummy, who will buy into it. And they will think in their own twisted sense of reality that they are saving America by taking care of this person. It's the old, if you had an opportunity, would you go back in time and would you kill baby Hitler? That's what it is. Would you kill baby Hitler if you knew what Hitler was going to be? If you could travel back in time, would you kill baby Hitler, innocent baby Hitler, pre-mustache, okay? Would you kill baby Hitler to save everybody that Hitler caused to suffer? Would you do that? It's a moral dilemma, right? It's kind of the same thing. The guy wrote a book urging Iran to kill Trump. Did you know that? And Iran had an assassination plot, right, Morgan? According to the federal government, anyway. There's a real question about whether or not this guy actually works for Iran. There's a real question there. Is there a mole inside the Secret Service? Does that mole work for Iran? Is this guy just a dumb idiot that is being manipulated? He had a Biden-Harris sticker on his car, according to reports. The guy donated to Democrats 19 times. Oh, but he's a Republican. He donated to Democrats 19 times. 19 times. All through Act Blue. Small donations, too. But it's still 19 times. But the news media spent the past, day or so telling you that this guy was a Republican. It maybe at one point in time he supported Trump. That doesn't matter. Okay, he bought into the rhetoric. I had to respond to Mike Pence today. And, again, I like Mike Pence as a person. I don't like him as a politician, but I like him as a person. I've always gotten along with Mike Pence. And I know that I'm very hard on Mike Pence. And I think that I'm hard on him for some justifiable reasons, because I know that a lot of you Hoosiers really like him. I know that a lot of the Republicans listening right now are like good friends with Mike Pence, and they don't like that I'm not very nice to him. But my job is to the audience. My job isn't to any politician or political party. My job is to you. It's one of the reasons that I don't do the cocktail party thing. It's one of the reasons that I'm not bought and paid for by various activists or political parties or whatever their interests are and other people are. Okay? Because I don't do that sort of thing. But I had to respond to Mike Pence. When Mike Pence, he posted, and again, graciously, that he was glad that Trump was okay and all of that. But I had to ask him a question, or at least, make a statement about it. It would have been really nice, or would be really nice, if you were more active when people falsely repeated the news story about how Trump supporters were there to lynch you on January 6th. It would be nice if you weren't so quiet when that story got republished over and over again, as it has over the past several months. It would be nice if you, as the guy who is the subject of that false story, would come out and debunk it right away. Because, yeah, Mike Pence's silence on those things adds to that rhetoric. When Mike Pence, who was never in any danger, was never targeted for assassination by any Trump supporters on January 6th or any other time, if he comes out when they repeat that lie in order to demonize Trump and his supporters as people who will murder any political opposition, including his own vice president, if Mike Pence stays silent, he actually gives that story weight. He gives it credibility. So it would be nice if he would come out and say, yeah, a little shoestring that's like 3 inches tall is not a serious threat to my personal safety. Stop reporting lies. That would be nice. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet. I hope it does in the near future. They got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth.
Podcasts by Federated Media.